subscribe to our series in the long dark on how to survive, or our just basic guide series. You know, how to survive, how to live, how to thrive, how not to freeze to death. So, if you recall in the last episode, we briefly covered the UI, your condition, your stats, everything regarding that. This episode, and we briefly touched on the early game scenario. And so we're gonna expand on that. So in the early game, you just spawn in, you've been around a little while, and you've not gotten a whole lot taken care of, You've just spawned in, you gotta hunt down buildings and supplies and shelter, because warmth, or the lack thereof, will kill you the quickest in this game. So as you can see, if you've never been here before, this region's Timberwolf Mountain. I'm out here on the lake next to freshly killed deer, which I've been harvesting a little bit of meat out of. I've got my nice little fire here to keep me warm. If I step away from the fire, you can see, even with my great clothing, check my clothing stats, I get plus 40 warmth and plus 14 wind. Even with all that, I'm still, it's still under freezing. So, I've got a fire here to keep me warm. So, progressing on from the early game, how do you know when you've gone from the early game to the mid game? Well, the early game, of course, is characterized by the mad rush of clearing out even just one region of supplies and materials. Hunting every shelter down and looting it for all its resources. You can oftentimes find stuff near shelters or around stuff out on the ground outside as well. So the early game, you're running around everywhere, just hunting for resources, loot, better clothes, better gear, so that you can survive in the wild a lot longer than if you just tried to run around with your t-shirt and your baseball cap on. So that's the early game. Progressing on from the early game, of course, you get to the mid game, which is where I would be right now. If we look at my clothing, I have some definitely mid-grade and a couple high-grade items. I've got, rabbit skin mitts, I've got mucklucks, which are essentially deerskin boots, but much lighter. So, I've got my set of clothing. It's not the greatest on the planet, there's definitely better, but I've got this, and it's all pretty much at 100% on this condition. On just about everything, so you can see the different warmth values that things give, and what kind of different loadouts on your clothing you'll get. So progressing into the mid-game from the early game, how do you know when you've gotten to the mid-game? Well, the mid-game is essentially when you've gotten enough loot to be able to survive without being immediately concerned about death. Of course, you're still going to be worried about water and food, although those are easily handled. So the mid-game is going to be more easily characterized by self-sustainability, rather than running around trying to find things. So you'll be relying more on crafted clothes than you will the clothes you can find. And you'll also be looking for things you can hunt for food instead of processed. Ooh. There we go, got him. So as you can see, I've got the survival bow with some arrows to go with it. And you can hunt creatures down, just like I'm hunting this deer. I've got to recollect my other arrow that's smashed into the snowbank up here. Here it is. And of course, as soon as you hit something, if it doesn't die outright, I hit this guy in the rumpus, so he's going to be running around for a while. As you can see, they leave blood trails, so you can hunt them down. So the mid-game is going to be self-sustainability, moving on from relying on processed foods, for instance, candy bars, granola bars, sodas, pork and beans, things like that. You're going to be quit relying on that and start learning to rely more on hunting and snaring and fishing to get your food supplies, and more on crafted clothing. I really want this deer to die so I can get my arrow back, but I'm not too worried about it. So as you can see, if I go back to my inventory on my clothes, I've got mostly found clothing, but I do have rabbit skin mitts because they're the highest warmth you can get for your hand. Anyway, that'll be the mid-game, is when you have enough tools such as a bow or a gun, hatchet, knife, pry bar, the whole 9 yards, able to open containers, able to loot resources very easily and without restrictions, and be able to just set yourself up without having to worry about moving around all over different regions just to find the items you need to survive. Now at this point you should have the items you need to survive, and you can begin doing things like hunting and fishing and all that good stuff to be able to survive from that instead of relying on what you can find, because eventually what you can find definitely will run out. And when it runs out, just like this deer, you're dead. So I'll just take my arrow back. And so as you can see, I've got that deer down there with my campfire. And the nice thing is crows will circle your kills. And so crows will come guide for that guy. So your mid-game is all going to be about getting the resources you need to survive. And then once you've got those resources, hunting, crafting everything you need instead of relying on what you can find. So how are you going to survive the mid-game? Well, obviously hunting. That's one good way. You can also rely off cattails. That's a good thing in Interloper. But I'm going for just a basic set of guides here, and we'll be moving forward from basic tips like this in the next couple of episodes to more higher tier, more advanced kind of things. I'll be doing a couple hunting guides, etc. So, you know, still got this fire here, got this deer here, got that deer there I just hunted. So your mid-game, you need to be... You'll know when you're in the mid-game, because you've gone from running and finding everything for your survival to forging ahead into making your survival. Crafting, hunting, fishing. There's a fishing hut right there. That's your mid-game. Now, I'll give you some pointers in the next couple of episodes, specifically on how to survive in the wilderness, not specifically at any one portion of the game, you know, in any stage, early, mid, or late game, but just at any time. Specifically tactics like how to deal with wolves, be it using decoys or throwing stones to distract them, and running away when it's better to run or to light a flare or a torch. And I'll also move into things like hunting deer, hunting rabbits either with the bow and arrow if you're just seeking to waste resources and up your archery skill, or with stones, or with trapping, hunting bears, hunting wolves if you want to hunt wolves, and even, at some point here, we'll hunt the ethereal moose. And I will put a guide up on tactics and ideas for that, help you guys out on your journey there. So, of course, I'll expound on this later on, but in our hunting tutorials, but crows will circle kills. So if you don't track it down, like I was following that guy, though he just ran in circles, oftentimes things can go half a map away, half of the region away from you after you shoot it to kill it, either by the rifle or by the bow if you didn't kill it outright. And so tracking can be a pain. So anyway, just to recap on these last two episodes, early game is characterized by just rushing madly about, finding everything you can find, looting everything, relying off of processed food. You don't want to be trying to hunt or anything like that. It's too much of a time dump in the early game because you can't survive outdoors for long enough. Then the mid game is going to be once you've got the tools you need. So for instance, tools, you know, you've got the knife, you've got the hatchet, you've got the bow, you've got arrows, or you've got the rifle. Maybe even the pry bar, hacksaw, and heavy hammer. Once you've got those, you can just start beginning become self-sufficient instead of relying on everything else that's around you, hunting deer and everything else. Anyway, I will catch you guys in the next episodes. I think the episode after this one, or the next episode we'll be seeing, we'll be getting into basic survival tactics. Part of the game, to make it easier or harder, of course, for you new players, is map knowledge. You really do have to know the maps and know them pretty well. And I wouldn't recommend looking at maps online for getting started. I'd recommend simply just wandering about and just starting the game maybe on Pilgrim or a custom setting to give you guys an easier chance at it. That's how I learned. That's how most of the other veterans in this game mode learn. It was just by hopping straight into the sandbox game, picking a random region. For me, I started in Mystery Lake, and then just going, and you learn the maps as you go. So definitely if you're going to be playing Stalker Interloper, you're going to want to know the maps first. But for you guys who are new, map knowledge is important. You need to know where resources can be, where the biggest dumps of resources could be. For here, it's going to be the mountaineering hunt and the tail section up there on the top of the mountain. So that's what we'll be covering in the next episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I hope it helped you really new players out and understanding the different stages of the game. And to be able to clarify a few things. The next episode we'll be doing a tutorial or at least I hope it'll be the next episode. We might put something else in between, but we'll be doing a lesson on what it's like from the very beginning of the game to begin running about and finding your resources and getting set up in the world so you don't die. Until that time, though, I've been Lonely Wolf. I hope this guide has helped you guys. If you want to see more content like this, go ahead and leave a like or subscribe or, I don't know, any of all that other good stuff that the YouTubers tell you to do, right? And I will catch you guys in the next episode. Until then, I've been Lonely Wolf, and I hope you enjoy. I ramble a lot in case you didn't notice.